morning to all of you. What we've done, we have to meet with you today to give you an idea of what we're going to focus on as, caucus and state. And we hope the other three caucuses in the General Assembly, quite frankly, join in with us. We're here to talk about what our priorities are for the 2015 session and how we can build a new Virginia economy. And if you listen to the governor's State of the Commonwealth address, I mean, he made that pretty clear as to what his goals were and why. We're going to be working with the governor to create a stronger and more diversified economy across the entire state. Building a new Virginia economy means the following: improving our economic and workforce development, upgrading our infrastructure, attracting new businesses and new entrepreneurs to Virginia. And let me tell you how successful California, which does not have the best work environment, has been in doing that. I've been told that 40% of all the venture capital money in the United States is within a 50-mile radius of San Francisco. We can get a lot of that, and we're trying to do that at Tyson's Corner, but we can do a lot better. Making sure that our children have access to world-class, public education, keeping the community safe, and providing equality for every citizen in Virginia. And we're doing that through a series of legislation. You're going to hear more on that. We're committed to helping attract. Democrats in the Senate are committed to helping attract high-quality, high-paying businesses here. And I can't tell you how important that is. Obviously, we don't have full economic equality across the whole state. In a variety of areas, you can't possibly tell me that a kid born, say, in Wise County has the same educational opportunities as a kid born in McLean, or Great Falls, or Fairfax County, period. It simply doesn't exist. There's a lot that we can do. Governor McAuliffe, during his first year, made 267 job announcements, attracting over $5.5 billion in foreign investment. And he's working on stuff that'll make that pale in comparison. But let me tell you, it was more than double what any governor has done during their first year in office. Let me repeat that. More than double what any governor has done during their first year in office. We need to build off of that success, not only for the remainder of the session, but for the next 3 years. Now, what I'd like to do is turn this over to Senator Marsden from Fairfax. Dave?
Thank you, Jack. I'm Senator Dave Marsden from Fairfax County. And the economic opportunity and all the great work that Governor McAuliffe is doing to create economic opportunity in Virginia, the other half of that equation is wages. And wages have become a serious problem here in the Commonwealth. The people need an honest dollar for an honest day's work. And the minimum wage has been frozen for some time now. It's at $7.25. And yesterday on a party line vote, an increase in the minimum wage was rejected in the Commerce and Labor Committee. Now I'm optimistic. I'm generally an optimistic person. And last year we got it out of Commerce and Labor and out of the Senate on a very close vote and over to the House of Delegates. But this year on a party line vote of 11-4, it didn't come out of committee. But the reason I'm optimistic is that last year Republicans fought back. They had reasons why we shouldn't raise the minimum wage. They were defiant. And this year, they couldn't look me in the eye. They looked down. Most of them left the room and left the proxy with other people. We know what the right thing is to do, and so did they. They just didn't do it. Because they're supporting not Virginians, not the common, everyday working Virginians, but major business. And I support major businesses too. God knows we need them here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. But we can't afford to forget about the workers that we have here in the Commonwealth. Let me just give you 3 statistics. You've probably heard them before. Over the last 40 years, if we kept the minimum wage up for inflation, it would be $10.55 today. And we wouldn't be sitting here having this discussion. Corporate profits are now the largest share of the gross domestic product since 1950. And labor and salaries are the lowest share of the gross domestic product since 1955. At the same time, over the last 30 years, the top 10% of earners grew their wages by 51%. The bottom 10% grew by 3%. You know, I've worked with young people all my life. As a probation officer, as a group home director, juvenile detention superintendent. And I saw a report the other day that 50% of America's children who go to school are below the poverty level. 50%. Now, Virginia's not there yet, but it's pretty clear where we're trending in that direction. Is it these kids' fault? Are they just not working hard enough? Is that why they're in poverty? No. They're in poverty because we're not giving their parents enough to live on. You know, there's one thing that a youngster wants when he goes to school every day, is to have a sack lunch, that somebody who loves them and had the money to purchase the supplies, to pay for it, prepared for them, or to have lunch money, to be able to go to school and pay for their lunch, not to go in and sign up for a free lunch. That's not the American dream. Now, there's other measures, too, that we're supporting this year. Include equal pay for equal work, paid sick leave, and an excellent proposal by Senator Lucas that will provide loans for small women-owned and minority-owned businesses, and a proposal by Senator Dance that would ban the box on employment applications so that people who've made a mistake in their life don't get rejected for a job simply because they have a criminal record. This is the way we want to extend opportunity and economic security to all Virginians. We know what the right thing is to do. We just need to do it. Thank you. And now I'd like to turn the podium over to Senator Lewis, who was my mentor when I joined the House of Delegates 10 years ago.
I'm Senator Lewis, and I want to talk to you briefly this morning about a topic and what we're advancing, measures that we're advancing as a caucus on something that is fundamental not only to our democracy, but fundamental to good problem-solving government, and that is access, participation on a fairly equitably drawn playing field. We are advancing measures as a caucus that are going to aim to expand Virginians' right to vote absentee. Virginians lead very busy lives and need to make sure that they have access and ability to participate in our process. That's why several of my colleagues have bills that will give every senior the opportunity to vote absentee. Senator Howell has a bill that would allow any voter to vote absentee in person with no need to give reason or excuse. We're also working to approve new forms of voter ID, photo ID, to identify voters at the polls. It makes no sense to refuse perfectly valid forms of identification that show that those who are voting are who they say they are. And we're also voting to make elections more fair. The Senate Democrats are carrying bills and resolutions that ensure that the election maps are fairly drawn. Voters are supposed to choose their elected representatives, not the other way around. My own Senate Bill 1000 adopts the Iowa form of nonpartisan redistricting, and I'm pleased to announce that this morning it passed through subcommittee and will be heard by the Full Privileges and Elections Committee this afternoon. And what we seek to do is to have the maps fairly and drawn in a nonpartisan fashion. So again, the electeds choose their representatives. There are also resolutions to ensure that former offenders regain their right to vote. Once folks have served their time, Virginians who have paid their debt to society deserve a right to re-enter that society and to fully participate in the most fundamental of rights, and that is the right to vote. And that equality starts with the right to vote. And so now Senator Edmond will talk about an opportunity for equality.
Thank you, Linwood. As Delegate Lewis said, I'm going to talk about our equal opportunity agenda. We support Governor McAuliffe's efforts to have a Commonwealth that's open for business and welcome to all, regardless of national origin, race, who people love, or their gender. And our equal opportunity agenda includes a woman's right to control her own health care, including full repeal of the onerous and illogical ultrasound mandate. Our agenda includes educating high school graduates who've been granted status by the federal government to remain here, to continue their education, and potentially to reach their potential to fully contribute to the Virginia economy. These students have been authorized by the federal government to work and to have driver's licenses. Our agenda further includes having our code and our Constitution fully reflect the realities of marriage in the Commonwealth for committed couples, both in our Constitution and in our code. We would also like to codify non-discrimination in state employment. This is a measure that's been adopted by 3 of the last 4 governors through executive order. It's time that we just put an exclamation point in the code book, in words of Senator McEachin, the sponsor of this legislation. We know discrimination exists in the private sector. We want to build a climate where workers feel that they can contribute and not worry about where they're working if they're in a workplace that's going to more than tolerate them, but look for their talents first. Our caucus and our party recognizes the realities of 2015 and all the areas you're going to hear about. We invite other parties to join us, and we expect that if they follow the lead of the people of Virginia, that they will. Now I have the pleasure of introducing Senator John Edwards of Roanoke, who will talk about our education agenda.
Thank you, Senator Evans. As you know, we Democrats believe in opportunity, equal opportunity for all. One of our founders, Andrew Jackson, famously said, "Opportunity for everyone, special privileges for none." And the key to providing equal opportunities for our citizens and for everyone is quality public education. We all know that. But right now we're seeing that people are falling through the cracks. We have some of the very best schools in the country. Some of the very best schools, especially in Fairfax County and their richer areas in our Commonwealth. But many of our citizens are falling through the cracks. One of the things we're doing is expediting SOL leave take opportunities for our children and limiting the number of SOLs the students are required to take. But one of our great challenges as a Commonwealth is the growing disparity in incomes, the growing disparity in the Commonwealth between those that have the most and those that have the least. We're seeing, for example, Senator Morrison mentioned in some places throughout the country, 50% of children live in lower economic areas. In Virginia, the number has risen in the last 10 years from 29% to 40% of those children living in economically depressed areas. From 29% to 40% of all children throughout the Commonwealth. Now, there are a lot of things we can do about that, including the things that my colleagues have mentioned. One of the things I put in is a Senate Joint Resolution number 281 that would study the needs of urban school districts. In particular, many of the urban school districts are in the lower economic areas of the Commonwealth. Roanoke City, for example, has a large number of free and reduced lunch program students. I think it's in the neighborhood of 80% or something like that. It's a huge number. We need to study the disparity of income districts throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. The problem has gotten worse, as I mentioned, over the last 10 years. And there are many things we can do. We as a Democratic Party are committed to improving the disparity in income levels and improving the quality of public education in all areas of Virginia, including those in the lower socioeconomic income level. Thank you. And for now, I'd like to talk about something that's on a lot of people's minds, ethics. Senator Jennifer Wexton, who is an expert in ethics.
That's what she got.
That's right. Good point, Chad. Good afternoon. Good morning. Today you heard all about issues that are going to expand opportunity for Virginians in many aspects of their lives. However, one aspect that has historically been overlooked, but is currently on the minds of many citizens, and certainly many of my constituents, is the opportunity to restore confidence in our state government. I was elected to the Senate on January 21st of last year, and you guys may not remember that date. I mean, I obviously always will. But that's the date that Governor McDonnell was indicted. And I came to Richmond kind of hoping that we would have some more movement on ethics at that time. And I was frankly pretty disappointed that we weren't able to do better than we did last year. Well, what a difference a year makes. I am confident that we will be able to pass real and lasting ethics reform this session. And to that end, I'm here to tell you about some of my and my colleagues' bills that reflect this priority. Virginia's laws continue to have many loopholes. Specifically, one that I find specifically nonsensical is this intangible versus tangible gift. None of the legislation that was passed in 2014 would stop intangible gifts to legislators and other public officials. Elected officials can still take chartered flights to golf tournaments and Alaskan hunting trips on lobbyist dime, provided they disclose it on their annual financial disclosure forms. We need to and can do more to ensure that elected officials uphold the high ethical standards that citizens expect of us. My first bill, SB 1278, would address this concern. It imposes a strict $100 limit on any gift or gifts to an elected official by any person, organization, or business within a calendar year for both tangible and intangible gifts, which are defined in the legislation. Gifts to family members of elected officials could be deemed gifts to the legislator. Intangible gifts valued at greater than $100 could be accepted if they were approved by the Virginia Conflict of Interest Advisory Council. We would have to determine that these gifts, that these things like trips, conferences, were germane to their duties, our duties as legislators. Only by instituting these strict limits and regulations can we regain the confidence of those we represent. Another bill I put forward, SB 924, would address state funding of travel expenses for legislators who attend secret meetings. Government is supposed to be all about transparency. So if organizations won't disclose their agendas, that is, they keep secret the kinds of policy and legislation that they'll be discussing and pushing us to pass, make no mistake about it. It's inappropriate for the taxpayers of Virginia to pick up that tab. If our constituents are going to pay for the trip, they should know the topics and agenda that are being discussed. It's as simple as that. Several of my colleagues in the Democratic caucus are also making ethics reform a top priority this session. I want to take a moment to tell you about some of their bills. Adam Evan has put forward SB 1289, which would establish the Virginia Independent Commission on Ethics and create a system for audits of officials' disclosure forms. I think this is a bill that moves us in the right direction, and it deserves the consideration of the full Senate. Senator Marsden has legislation that would tackle some other ethics-related issues we've been seeing. We've all heard about General Assembly members leaving elected office to take cushy six-figure state jobs and thereby collect a much bigger pension than they would have otherwise. And Senator Marsden's bill, SB 687, seeks to remedy that problem, not by prohibiting this practice. I mean, there are people with expertise who can better serve often the Commonwealth in these jobs, but by taking away that additional financial incentive by changing how these legislators or these officials' pensions would be calculated. SB 735, which is also Senator Marsden's bill, would prohibit the General Assembly members from accepting lodging, transportation, or hospitality or travel-related thing with an aggregate value of over $250 from any lobbyist or lobbying organization. All of these bills are attempts to help restore the trust of citizens in their government, and I hope that every member of the General Assembly will give them careful consideration and the thorough debate that they deserve. And now I would like to pass the mic to my friend, Senator Barbara Fabolo.
Thank you, Senator Marsden. Good morning. I and my colleagues in the Democratic caucus will focus a large amount of time and energy this session on making people's lives healthier and safer and making our communities stronger. If you look at our agenda, I think that sentence captures it all. Specifically, I am going to focus on the child care situation in the state. As many of you know, there have been some excellent articles out there, very good investigative work on what is going on in family day homes and the fact that we have a large number that are unregulated. We don't know the number, but as it turns out, there are many more than anybody ever expected, and our children are not getting adequate care. So I've introduced bills that take, forgive the pun, baby steps towards correcting the situation, all the way up to a comprehensive approach where we, change the number of children who are in unregulated care to actually count the children that the caretaker's taking care of, because all children need that caretaker's attention. And then I move towards a basic, everybody's registered, and you know what? You have to pass CPR, you have to get a background check, and your home has to be safe from fire and other hazards. And then I have a complete licensure bill, which would include everything I just said, some professional training requirements, and everybody would be under that umbrella. I am working with the administration on that bill.